message to the National Assembly. We do not have a fear of assuming relationships with a country of this hemisphere, the United States. They are historical relationships that were even held by our liberator Simón Bolívar. They are historical relationships that have had their setbacks, and without any doubt, I believe, due to incomprehension of the political, social, and economical reality of Venezuela. And today we are speaking on subjects of energy cooperation and commercial, economical, in different senses, and that economical binational agenda must be at the service of the Venezuelan people. That is why I wanted to call for this National Council of Economy to address you and to speak frankly and of the vision that we have in a new stage for Venezuela, where the first thing that I have to say is that we ratify entirely the program of economical recovery, prosperity, and growth that was presented by President Nicolás Maduro in the year 2016 to the country, and that has allowed us to be where we are, that has allowed the economy to be an economy, a leader in growth in Latin America. It was thanks to that program, and we are ratifying it in its principles, in its parameters, in its concepts. The first concept for us is the national production. No innovation in reality perturb the processes of national production. Our productive sectors, the food sector, the pharmaceutical sectors, the industrial ones, that for the new investments that can come to the country to push the processes of national production around what is done in Venezuela, because what is made in Venezuela is what has allowed us to overcome this year's the grave conditions originated by the criminal blockade against Venezuela. The central point is the national production, public sector, and the private sector as well, to continue the course of development of the 14 engines of the economy. And we, if you remember, we had spoke of the creation of the mayor state, agro-industrial and communal, because we have done plans with the communal economy for it to apport to the production of foods with a sense very clear, and I am going to say it. May no one be crazy, and when I mean no one, I mean you and us. No one can go crazy because the process that are derived from the incomes of petroleum and of the petroleum incomes, greetings to the president of PDVSA, his accomplishments will be to the two sovereign funds that we announced yesterday to the country. The first sovereign fund is for the social development and protection, and to improve the incomes of the workers of the country, and for that improve of the incomes is also turned into benefits for the productive and commercial sectors. We have spoken of what it means to have more power of being able to buy more services and goods, more growth in jobs. That allows the substitution of imports, more incomes for the state through the captation of tributes, greetings to the superintendent, and this at the end will allow us to close fiscal gaps and external gaps as well. But if that is why I use the phrase "may no one go crazy" here, because the plan of diversifying our economy of the petroleum income must maintain its course, and to this National Council of Economy, it must be turned in the engine for the industrial platforms to have access to credits, for the economical sectors to have access to credits as well, and the communes through the consultations, the popular consultations, and the entrepreneurs to be guaranteed a financial support for their businesses, for the credit to be turned in an engine of the productive apparatus of Venezuela. We have already overcome in the past the distortions that derived from the credit as a bench of other different types that were not directed to the productive sectors of the country or the economical activities of the country. That stage was overcome and we're not going to return to it. We're not going to go back. There must be a different handling, and that different handling is to consolidate what we have all accomplished together, and it is to expand our capacities. What together we have reached. It is not that we're going to substitute now the business class, productive public-private class of Venezuela by force. No, welcome the international investment. But we have an experience, for example, in the mining of the Orinoco, there's an international investor that has benefited and pushed national companies in the services providing in the machinery, and it has supported in national sectors, and that is the scheme that we want to push for this stage of Venezuela. You know that the incomes that are already happening through the sale of the volumes of petroleum will go through the Central Bank of Venezuela. Here we have the President Laura Guerra, and they will go to the private banking also for the mechanism of the exchange market. That is important. But here I also want to do a parenthesis. We have to have an efficient handling of the currencies, and I'm going to continue insisting, and I will not rest on saying that it must be given a strategic substitution of the imports to give a step to the national production, for it to be a national production of quality for the goods and the services of the economical sectors of Venezuela, to be at the service of the Venezuelan people, and the currencies to be used exclusively for the strategic sectors, for wealth of capital, and for us to have a better use of the currencies. Let's learn from the past. The past has given us lessons, and many times the currency of imports move the national sectors. That is why we want to be very careful, and it is known by the Ministry of Economy and Finances, and also by the Vice President of Economy, and by the Central Bank of Venezuela, and it is known by the economical team of President Nicolas Maduro. And for today, they're accompanying me in this hard task, and they know that our concern is for the currencies to be a pusher of the national economy, to guarantee, well, the full capacities, productive capacities of Venezuela. Let's not repeat mistakes from the past. I wanted to give you that message and that invitation for this economical dialogue that we have maintained during the last years, be to guarantee that the model that we set of the 14 engines of the economy, as the Vice President Calisto said, that President Maduro had to dedicate 2 days to show to the country all of the accomplishments in the year 2025, well, for us to be able to continue on that path, for nothing to change, but for us to be able to give better well-being to the Venezuelan people with the currencies of the petroleum income, but for petroleum income not to become the great distorter of the productive economy of Venezuela, but on the contrary, for it to be the pusher of the wide capacities that our country has in the different sectors. Here we have representation of 35 sectors of the economy. Well, the petroleum income must serve to that, and I want to do a very important announcement today. For the first time in our history, it has described a contract of commercializing of GLP gas, and it will go and export the first molecule of gas in Venezuela. We had said it, we had announced it, that we would export the first molecule of gas, and we are doing that. We are fulfilling President Maduro and also to our people, and that is the path, and we have accomplished it with our own sacrifice, because that gas that is coming in export, it was done by PDVSA with its own sacrifice, as it accomplished levels of production of 1,200,000 barrels that had not been seen since 2015. As I informed yesterday to the country, all of the gasoline that was consumed in the year 2025 was of national production of PDVSA, and that must continue being the path. That is the best example. Is that PDVSA grabs the currencies to import gasoline. That is not what we want. What we want is for those currencies to enter the social development and the economical development of Venezuela through the creation of the sovereign funds that I announced yesterday for the country. Another fundamental aspect of the economical program is the strategic substitution of imports that we have been talking on, diversifying the economy of petroleum income and the recovery of the credits. We always listen to that for the currencies to allow the recovery of the credits, but those credits, we do not want credits, and I am going to say in our language, it is not for the financial bicycle nor the currency exchange bicycle. Those credits go to the strategical sectors and the productive sectors of the country. That is what credits are going to be for the fishermen, the farmers, the agro industry and tourism, to be able to access a credit that is going to impact the economy, not for the enriching of a few or of an elite. No, the petroleum income must be for all of Venezuela and for all the Venezuelan people and all of their circumstances. You know that yesterday we presented 3 laws before the National Assembly. The first law, the organic law of hydrocarbons, very set and concrete reforms. A long time has passed, and Venezuela first has been under an economical blockade that is unprecedented. Well, recently a military aggression that had never happened in our history, and Venezuela must continue going forward and giving steps forward without compromising the historical commitments and without compromising Venezuelan history. And with that direction, we have taken the decision, looking at the results, the successful results of the business models seen in the law, the organic law anti-blockade. We have decided to take the models that are there and incorporating in the organic law of hydrocarbons. The productive petroleum push that Venezuela had was thanks to the anti-blockade model, and I showed the number to the country yesterday. In the year 2025, thanks to those models, Venezuela captured almost $900,000 million in investments, national and international. It is a model where we receive our taxes as is contemplated in the law, and it allowed for us to recover petroleum production, and that allowed for the balance of the year 2025. As it was said recently by Wilmer, we were also very surprised at the end of the year, and we said, and I said it when I checked with President Maduro, the miracles exist, but those miracles are also translated in the united work. It is translated in the sacrifice of our working men and women, and it is translated in the national cohesion, in the national union around. Despite the difficulties created by the criminal blockade, Venezuela can find its own paths, and those paths brought as a result at the end of the year 2025 as a positive closure in all of these sectors of economy, all of them. We checked one by one, and we cannot say that a single economical engine closed in numbers. They all closed in positive in growth and in the given to the PIV, in such a way that we want to do that reform, incorporating the successes of the anti-blockade law and the law of hydrocarbons, and that it allows to have math factors of equilibrium. And I speak very clearly to the country. When it was legislated on this law, Venezuela had enough fields that were developed and ripe to cap investment. Venezuela, they're not think in having investment for virgin fields, the so-called green fields. Well, those fields, as the word says, they're virgin, they have never been intervened, they have no kind of infrastructure, and the rules that are applied for the investment cannot be the same as for a field that is ripe and already developed. They cannot be the same, and that is why we speak of a math factor of balance and of correction that allows to cap the investment. There's no hidden extraterrestrial or secret agenda in this history. That is the truth, and for analysts to come in, they can say whatever they say, but this is the truth, and the country is going to see it with numbers. The country is going to see that we're going to have investment for those virgin fields that Venezuela has in their biggest petroleum reserves of the country. Those reserves are going to be exploited for the national development in these rules that we have been talking on, in these principles of our economy. The second law is the law of social economical rights, because the reality years ago overcome the law of fair prices, the penalization. So we're going to a process to give space to a mechanism that has been functioning, which is the law of agreed prices, and for the committees to be able to be created of consumers, for the consumer in Venezuela. Villegas have access to goods and services of quality, which is what we have asked for the norms to be in accordance, so we can push the patents in Venezuela, the intellectual property, and in its entirety what leads the commerce and what sets the development and the exchange of goods and services. It has a good environment, so both consumers and providers have a transparent relationship of efficiency. That is what we want with this law. So that is why the committee was created, for the social economical laws and rights of the Venezuelan people, and it goes to all the sectors, the consumers and the providers of services. So this is a law that we want to push, and the superintendent of banking knows what I'm speaking on, because the Minister of National Commerce participated in this law that we have been conceiving. And lastly, it is the organic law of acceleration of procedures that we have spoken here. We have moved forward, but we have not reached the levels that we need for the exports that we need for the economy in Venezuela. The common citizen need for their administrative procedures. And when you study the norms, the judicial norms in Venezuela and procedures, they are dispersed in such an amount of laws in Venezuela that almost all of the national judicial system might have to be dismantled. And that is why we looked for the mechanism that has functioned in the law anti-blockade, that is applying norms based on the reality of each procedure that is wanted to be done. We disapplied a norm that puts exaggerated procedures to the strategic imports, and we also did it on a procedure that affects a person, citizen that wants to export. It is an easier mechanism that avoids this legislative procedure of having to do reforms that are infinite and cannot be counted. So there are three laws that are going to have a good impact on the national economy, but that are also going to have an impact on the social happiness of our people, the daily life and the national life of the Venezuelan people in their daily lives. That is what we look for. And well, I didn't want to say goodbye without asking you authorization, because we are part of the National Council of Economy, to create a national committee of defense of the economical rights of Venezuela in the world, where the national executive is represented, and the private and petroleum sectors, and a food sector as well, the industrial, commercial, communal, and banking and export sectors not related to petroleum, which is to defend the economical rights of Venezuela in multilateral organisms, in international instances, and for that committee to go to the world to take and to raise the economical rights of Venezuela, and for them to go with the flag, as we said yesterday, where wherever we have to cross our borders, let's do it standing and never dragging. That is the dignity of the Venezuelan people. So, dear brothers and sisters of Venezuela, this is the message that I wanted to share with you and invite you to ratify and to continue working this year 2026. I have the dream and I have the hope that it will be a great year for Venezuela and for all of us. Thank you for your attention. Thank you very much and very good afternoon. Has ended the National Council of Productive Economy.
We are live at this hour to Venezuela during the National Council of Productive Economy with the presence of acting President Delcy Rodriguez, who took the opportunity to assure that Venezuela has been boosting the dialogue among all productive sectors of the nation, and also, she said, is open to boost its relations with all nations worldwide, and also said that the main objective for the 2026 is the national production and the social happiness of the people on their daily life. This 2026, which kicked off with the criminal actions of January 3rd, Venezuela will keep showing that in the midst of the worst difficulties, it is capable of keep moving forward. This is all for the moment. Stay tuned with Telesur English for more information on this matter.